time for the first Swedish startup, ladies first, Denise Conway of Climeon. Come here. Welcome to Ecosummit.
Thank you.
This is your clicker.
Thank you.
Her CEO was pitching at NASDAQ in September, and a few days later, you listed.
Yes.
Congrats.
We do everything at Climeon speed. So, not so many people have brought up the climate issue. I think one or two people have mentioned it. But if we take a look here, we can see that in the last 10 years, there has been an increase of about 20 parts per million of the level of CO2 in the atmosphere. And 20 is not a huge number. But when you look at what is behind that, if we go back to pre-industrialization, we have almost doubled the level of CO2 in the atmosphere. And this is driving a rise in temperature. And we are now at about 1.5 degrees higher than we were in 1850. And this is very much due to the level of CO2 that is being emitted into the atmosphere, and a lot of that is due to the burning of fossil fuels. So we try to visualize CO2. I mean, it's invisible. So think about it. If you want to see how it would look, imagine a sphere that is 10 meters in diameter. Every day, we emit enough of these spheres to cover Manhattan. That is quite substantial. But it is the visible truth that is harder and more compelling. So it's very clear, if you look at Delhi, there is a toxic cloud that hangs over the city almost every day. There is a need to do something, and we are doing something. So we all know that renewable energy is on the increase. So hands up here, anybody who has heard of wind power? Almost everyone. Hand up anybody who's heard of solar power? Okay, hands up if you've heard of heat power. So, okay, some people have heard of heat power, and that is what I'm here to talk about today. So heat power is one of the most grossly underestimated sources of power on the planet. In fact, a remarkable 50% of all energy is wasted as heat. And this is one of the things that we took into consideration when Climeon was founded in 2011. But we're a company that likes to challenge ourselves. So we focused on the most difficult temperatures. So the temperatures below 120 degrees. In 2015, we managed to successfully have our first commercial deployments. And we have been growing from strength to strength. And very recently, we listed on the Stockholm NASDAQ. So where do we get our heat? So there's a lot of heat, obviously, in industrial processes, or let's say in transportation. So we all know the marine industry, they use engines, they burn fossil fuels. So there is the ability to reduce the level of CO2 in these industries by converting some of that heat into power. But where it gets really interesting is when we look at geothermal. Geothermal heat is available at high temperature in a number of limited countries. So Indonesia, for example, the US, Japan. In these countries, you have very high temperature heat under the ground. But the availability of geothermal as a renewable baseload has been limited by the technology that's available. Because we have been able to tap into low temperature heat and generate power at low cost, we have opened up the world to renewable baseload power. Now, there are many players in the industry in heat power, but most of those players are operating in the high temperature space. And obviously, we are one of the key players in low temperature because we have been able to create commercially sustainable power. And if we look, I know we've had a number of people today that have talked about how the energy industry is changing. So everything is moving away from these centralized power plants to more decentralized plants. And we know that wind and solar play a large part in this. But also if we look to distributed power, and we're in the process now of preparing to do our first deployments of distributed geothermal. So that is renewable baseload. So let's talk about renewable. If we do the comparison between intermittent power and baseload power, if we just compare wind, solar, and heat power, what we see is that to generate the same power with wind, you need kilometers of space. With solar, you need football fields of space. But if you look at heat power, you're talking about just a few square meters. And this is quite substantial. So heat power, it's a 2 by 2 meter box. We take hot water in and cold water, and we circulate a working media and generate power. We combine these modular blocks to generate power in larger scale. I'm running out of time. We have customers including Richard Branson, who bought the technology for Viking Cruises. But what I really want to talk about is distributed power in Iceland. So here we have sold 100 modules to what we call a heat power operator. So heat power operators, we believe, are going to play a big role in the future energy mix. And this is where we will do distributed power out where it's needed, using heat anywhere in the world using geothermal. So if anybody's interested in talking about heat power, please feel free to come up to me after this. That was the fastest I've ever done a presentation. 5 minutes is not enough. Thank you.
Well done, well done, well done.
It's hard.
It's hard, it's hard.
I'm Irish, you know, I like to talk. So
Okay, she's Irish.
yeah, go the Irish.
All right, cool. You can talk more during the networking breaks, okay? I
Yes,
promise.
indeed. Yes, thank you.
All right.